Hello there, my name is Mauro Sicard from Bricks Agency, and today I'm going to cover a pretty interesting topic that we often see our clients asking about, and that is what is a better platform to build on, Webflow or WordPress? And in order to carry out this analysis, we will cover 10 key factors from everything from the platform and the security to the speed, SEO, and many more things. Our goal here is to really make a very, very detailed analysis of which is the platform that you should build on. And it's important to mention that it's not going to be a kind of yes or no or like black or white answer. It's actually going to be pretty specific so you can really evaluate your use case and choose the platform that is best for you. So, okay, let's get started. Great. So let's do a quick introduction about all of this. So first, who am I? And you're like, if you're really looking to build on a good platform and you're doing some of your research, you should be worried about who are you're getting that information from. Because if I am completely biased, probably you don't want to take information from me. So I just want to give a little more context. Okay, so I'm Mauro Sicard. I run a web design and web development agency called Bricks Agency. I have been running that for the last 9 years. And at the moment, we're 21 full-time people. For those 9 years, about 4 of those years, we have been building websites on WordPress. And in the last 5 years, we have been building websites mostly on Webflow. So we understand very well both platforms. We still do some WordPress sites from time to time, but really most of our clients are looking for Webflow now. Uh, Even there are like a few exceptions. That's why we're going to record this video to help you understand which platform is better for you and what is kind of the reasoning behind. At the same time, it's important to mention that choosing your right platform is a decision that will last probably for at least a few years. It's like when you are looking for like a new apartment and you're looking for a good choice on what to rent or what to buy. Like that decision, even it may seem like a quick decision at the start, it is going to carry out many different things in the future. So if you choose, for example, the wrong platform for you, it is going to probably be a hassle for many years. So choosing the right one is definitely important. And that is why we will cover all the different factors. And depending on the factors that are more important to you, you can really make a decision of why choose one versus the other. Okay, so the first factor is the platform itself. So before actually like going into the specifics, it's important to understand what are the difference between those two platforms, because the truth is that many people just don't know them. So okay, let's start by speaking about Webflow. Okay, so I actually have the links in my other screen, so I will bring it up here. Great. Okay, so Webflow, it's pretty much like a closed source building platform. So it's a kind of private company that created the Webflow builder that allows you to build websites, more specifically marketing websites, using like the Webflow designer. The Webflow designer looks something like this, and you can use them to build your site. In this particular case, the difference versus WordPress, it's actually quite a lot. In the case of WordPress, WordPress is an open source platform, meaning that you are not like kind of using a private technology from another company, but you can really just download the code, host it yourself, and use it on your own. So WordPress is like a closed source platform, and instead of like Webflow is kind of building all of the platform themselves. In the case of WordPress, they are actually like using most of the community to build like all of the WordPress tools and all of the WordPress environment. For example, meanwhile in Webflow, most of the things you will be done actually using the Webflow designer, the Webflow editor. In the case of WordPress, like WordPress is just the foundation. And there's really a huge kind of amount of plugins and add-ons and themes that go around that. So that's kind of the main core difference. In one option in Webflow, you're using a closed source private company. that has like everything kind of fine tuned to how they believe you should be building your website. And in the case of WordPress, you're actually building on an open source platform that you can actually customize to your own. So that's the first thing you want to understand. What is better than that? That really depends on what you're looking for, and you'll probably find the answer a little down the road on the key factors. Okay. So number 2 is ease of use. Okay. Which one is easier to use than the other? And I will say, in this case, it's important to understand that even both of those are CMS builders. There's a core difference in them. And let me explain that. In the case of Webflow, and I actually have one very good example in here, you will see that when you enter your Webflow site, and in this case, I'm actually on the Webflow side of like the website that our website, you will see that it is mostly what we call in web design a visual composer, meaning that it is like a builder where you move things around, you customize them using the customizer, but it is really not like a drag and drop builder, meaning that you need to understand the basics of HTML and CSS in order to like build from scratch. Meanwhile, in WordPress, like WordPress is more of like a platform. If you, for example, I will open this site that we have in WordPress, you will see that like it is really like a platform with many, many different things. And the builder will be very different depending on which builder you are using. So for example, in this particular case, if we go into the homepage and we use the editor, in this case, we're using Elementor, you will see that like it has one interface versus, for example, if you're using Divi or Oxygen OS, like it is going to look a little different. So in that sense, like one is really like a builder and like a collection of plugins. Meanwhile, the other one, it's like a visual composer. And this can be a little complicated to understand it at first, but if we translate that into an easy answer, the quick answer will be that Webflow is much easier to edit, but probably not to build from scratch. So this pretty much means that if you are getting like an agency to build your website and you only want to edit that and you want to like double click and make some changes and like remove some text or change some bottom, actually editing a Webflow site is going to be much easier. But building from scratch, it can have a little kind of higher learning curve. In the case of WordPress, like even editing can be a little more complicated, but probably thanks to a lot of the kind of pre-built builders, it can be a little easier to learn from scratch. That will be my point of view. Some people may disagree or have different points of view, but I will say that. So editing on Webflow is easier, but kind of building from scratch, it's probably a little faster on WordPress. Okay, so that's kind of our ease of use. Then we can go into speed, which is one of the most important factors for a lot of companies. So a fast website is not like a nice to have, it's really a must nowadays. So if you have like a slow website, you're just going to lose conversions, and that is not something that you can do. So what is faster? And in order to understand what is faster, it is very important to understand kind of the functionality of these two. And I actually have a very good image of these that I found that is like a great example. So the way WordPress works is pretty much like a dynamic site. And I actually found this image. I will make it bigger so you can see it. Sorry if it's a little blurry. I took it from the Teleport blog. Actually, great image, and kudos to them. So in this image, you can pretty much see that this kind of shows what is a dynamic website. Okay, so we have a web page in here, and then that page do a file request, specifically a PHP file request, because WordPress uses PHP, which is a very popular programming language. Then the web server receives that request, and then it sends that to PHP, which in this case also sends that to WordPress. In this case, WordPress is not the image, but we have like another step in here. And then like serves the files and also the database, and then it brings it back with the processed PHP file. So in this sense, we have a few different steps. We send it to the server. It kind of goes into PHP. It goes into WordPress and into the files, into the database. It goes back. You see the page. And obviously all that happens pretty quickly, but all of those steps are needed. In the case of an static website, in this case, Webflow is actually an static website. It is pretty much simpler. It is really, you have a website page, you do a request, and as there's everything already compiled, you just get a response, just like that. So obviously, by default, it is going to be faster. So you have the same website on WordPress and the same website on Webflow. The Webflow site is going to be faster. That's like a clear answer. And we had done that many times. We had built the same site on the both platforms just to try it out. And in the case of Webflow, it's going to load faster. So it is, if speed it's important for you, probably Webflow is going to be a little better solution. That being said, there are some companies trying to build, like static websites on Webflow. For example, one very popular one is called Static, in which you can actually transform all of that code into just static code, but that just adds another layer of complexity, if that makes sense. So, you also have caching. Caching is very popular. There's plugins like WordPress Fastest Cache or WordPress Rocket, among many others. Caching kind of does something like creating static files and serving them, but it still is not as fast. If you really want to have a WordPress site that is as fast as Webflow, you need to use something like Static. But that again adds another layer of complexity. So really speed is like the most important factor for you. I will say Webflow is a better choice for sure. But that's kind of the answer there. So then continuing, we have search engine optimization. So SEO, very important as well. Like a lot of companies have most of their traffic through SEO. For example, we do a lot of SEO efforts, and that's probably one of our main channel of acquisition. So if you value SEO a lot, this information is going to be relevant for you. Okay, so a lot of people claim that Webflow is better for SEO. But honestly, my point of view, I will say like the platforms are in general pretty even. So WordPress by default has a lot of big plugins that are very good for SEO. So for example, you have like Yoast SEO, which is like one of the most popular SEO plugins in the WordPress community. And this already has a lot of kind of optimizations for you to manage a lot of SEO settings. But there's really many more. For example, you have like all-in-one SEO, which is also pretty popular, among many others. And also there's not just kind of general SEO plugins, but there's like ones that are pretty specific. So for example, if you want to add schema to your SEO results, there's already pretty popular schema plugins like the one that you're seeing here. So because of that, actually doing SEO on WordPress is pretty easy, and there's a lot of plugins to extend that functionality. Keep in mind that SEO is not just installing plugins, but actually creating relevant content, doing keyword research, doing link building along many other things. But just from the on-page SEO perspective, I will say WordPress is pretty complete. Then what happens to Webflow? So Webflow, I will say, is a little less complete, meaning that it doesn't have as many, let's say, kind of add-ons to do that. By default, you can easily customize like heading types. You can customize alt text, meta titles, meta descriptions. All of the basics are customizable by default. But for example, if you want to use schema, you actually need to kind of code it yourself. There's no like kind of native schema solution. And that can be a problem because like some more advanced solutions on SEO are not available out of the box. For example, we had actually built like an schema integration that we have in here. Yeah, like Google Rich Snippet schema integration. And we actually had created this into Webflow. But this, for example, is a custom solution. It is not kind of like an available plugin that you can use right away. And in the case of WordPress, you can, if that makes sense. So at a general point, I will say SEO is probably a little more towards WordPress, but a lot of companies claim the opposite because as Webflow has better speeds, you have a faster website, sometimes that compensates because speed is a very important factor for like for SEO. So if you have a very fast website, you have that little benefit. So I will say in this point, these are kind of even. But if I would make one the winner, I will probably move it more towards WordPress. So, okay, we have that one. And then we have extensibility. So how far can you make the website much more powerful and much like broader? And in this case, definitely kind of WordPress wins. Why does it wins? Because WordPress has a set of plugins that is just huge. You take a look at like the plugin directory that we have in here. They have like literally thousands of plugins, and even just on the popular ones, the ones that have a lot of popularity, you can see that there's like 49 pages. But these are just the popular ones. If you go into all the plugins, there's probably more than 1,000 pages. And all of these plugins really allow you to do a lot of different things. So you can manage pretty much anything that you want. And in that sense, you're like, that really gives you a lot of extensibility. And you're like, as the platform is open source by default too, you can actually like pretty much build anything you want. And in that sense, you're like, that is very powerful. In the case of Webflow, they recently released something called Webflow apps, which allow you to extend some of that functionality. And there's some good apps. For example, like the Wizard app is actually pretty powerful. The JetBoost app also very good. MemberStack, like there's some very good apps in here, but by default there's not so many. But that it's important to keep in mind something in here. While WordPress is huge on plugins and add-ons and themes, it is important that to understand that Webflow has everything on its core. Like, for example, if you want to enable like SSL, like for example, you want to enable secure headings, you saw that there's even a plugin for that on WordPress. Like you have the really simple SSL to enable that like security heading on WordPress. But from my point of view, that is something that should be by default on the platform. Like you don't need to install a plugin for that. And there's like 5 million people that have that plugin installed. Meanwhile, in Webflow, that's just on by default. So even Webflow doesn't have as much kind of community of plugins. A lot of the features are already built in. And in that sense, you're like, that's much better because you don't need to be juggling between a lot of different plugins. So I would say in this point, even like WordPress definitely wins. You are losing like a little control and like kind of ease of use by using so many plugins. That's something just to keep in mind. And then we have maintenance. So what requires less maintenance? And on this, the clear winner is Webflow for sure. What happens with WordPress, and related to the point that I mentioned previously, on WordPress, you actually need to use plugins for a lot of core functionality. So, for example, if we take a look at the site that I was mentioning here, you can actually see that like on the plugins, there's actually many plugins here. If I click plugins, there's like 12 plugins, for example. And this is a super small site. There's websites that literally have like 30 plugins. And you can see that all the plugins are from different developers. You can see, for example, this one is by ServMask, and this one is by Elementor, and this one is by Delicious Brains. And all these plugins need to be updated, and that just needs to be done regularly. For example, you can see here that there's like 5 updates, and we literally update these like 2 weeks ago. So you always need to be making updates. You always need to be sure that things are working okay. Meanwhile, in the case of Webflow, that just doesn't happen. There's no updates, there's no maintenance. As a lot of the core functionalities are just on Webflow, you really don't need to do anything. You can keep the website without even touching it for a year, and nothing will happen. And in WordPress, if you do not update the plugins for a year, it is very likely you're going to get hacked. So on maintenance, if you're really looking for no maintenance on your site, for sure Webflow is a better solution, and that's like a very, very clear winner. And then we have security, which really goes along maintenance. And that is another place where Webflow really, really wins. So as Webflow has a static site, you don't even need to do like any security updates. The website cannot, like, it doesn't handle data. So you don't need to worry about security at all. Meanwhile, WordPress is commonly known for having security problems. And this is not because WordPress is poorly done or poorly programmed. it is just because as there's so many plugins and you rely so heavily on plugins, you have one plugin for one thing and one for the other. And these two plugins are not kind of built in each other. So you don't know how those are going to interact. And also there's it's very likely that one is going to have a security hole and it's going to just compromise all of the others. So that is like a problem, like a big problem per se. If you take a look at, for example, WordPress, which is the most popular kind of bug report on WordPress, you will see that there's just so many security vulnerabilities all the time. For example, on March 29th last year, over 5 million websites got exposed by like a remote code execution vulnerability on Elementor. And like that's just happens to a lot of users, and that's like a very big problem. And at the same time, for example, here you can see that like on March 2021, there was like a critical 0-day issue on the Plus add-ons for Elementor. And actually, that on that particular issue, some of my friends and some people I know actually got affected because that it was like a huge vulnerability. And that is just like some examples, but the truth is that that happens literally like every month or every a few weeks. And that happens because you have so many plugins. The security standards for those plugins are going to be so different that like you are just gonna be exposed. And that happens. So in the case of WordPress, you need to do ideally weekly maintenance on all of the plugins to ensure like those are up to date. And you also put some firewalls to avoid getting hacked or like having brute force attacks or things like that. And in the case of Webflow, all of that is handled by the platform. You don't need to do anything and you are just safe. For me, that peace of mind really kind of, it's pretty important for sure. But again, that depends on how much maintenance you want to have that security. So in this point, definitely Webflow is a clear winner. And we can continue to the next one. Okay, so scalability. Like you're building a website today, but you want that to last for many years and you want to probably grow much bigger. What is better for this? And on this, I will say it's a mixed answer. So if you take a look at Webflow and the pricing of Webflow, you will see that they're kind of self-serve plan that it's the most popular one is the business one. Not the most popular, but the most powerful. It's the business plan. And that allows you up to, like 300K visitors. So a little less than 500,000 per month. And in this case, like I will say that's really a lot for companies that are not getting like huge amounts of traffic. Like if you're a SaaS company or like a B2B business company, something like that, and you have this amount of visitors, it's very likely you're doing very well. But if you need to go above that, you will need to go into an enterprise option, which like it's something that is completely tailor made for you, but it's going to be much more expensive. On that sense, like that is probably going to be a little more expensive and you will need to make some deals to grow the website a little more. Versus in the case of WordPress, as you are hosting your site yourself, you can actually like just host it on a more powerful server. For example, we had some websites host on DigitalOcean, and you can buy like literally, for example, this one with 16 gigabytes of RAM and 8 CPUs for like less than $100 per month. And these can literally handle like over a few million visitors. You can probably have like 3, 4, 5 million, and this will handle it without no problem for a pretty accessible and cost in that sense. So we're talking about like how much, like if we're talking about scalability on really number of visitors, I will say WordPress will definitely win. You will be able to scale faster without much hassle. But if we're talking about scalability on like how much of a hassle will be to just get bigger, I think Webflow definitely wins because like it is just going to be like easier just to create a bigger plan and you won't need to handle servers or anything like that. So on the ease of use of scalability, Webflow wins. But it kind of that brute power of like how much kind of scale, I think WordPress wins. That will be my take on that. And we're close to finishing. I know this video is almost 30 minutes already, but really want to explain the fundamentals so you can choose one or the other. So we then have pricing. So pricing, I will say, it's really something that should not be your major factor because you don't want to go with a cheaper one. You want to go with the best one. And in this case, I think like both options are pretty affordable in that sense. Like, for example, if you are using like the business plan, you're going to pay 39 bucks per month. And if you have less than this amount of visitors, like that's really, from my point of view, super, super cheap. Um, at the end, like your website's a marketing channel and probably the most important marketing channel. So just paying that to have the website with no hassle, that is honestly pretty affordable from my point of view. Then if you go and get like a DigitalOcean droplet and host Webflow yourself, it can even be less than that. Like with like this plan, for example, you can probably have like 1 million visitors without any problem in a month. So it's even cheaper. But the truth is that like between 12 and 39 bucks, there's really no difference. Like it's just like 20 bucks difference, probably less than what you're going to spend on a meal or something like that. So I will not guide to that. At the same time, there's many managed hostings on WordPress. For example, a very popular one is Kinsta, and you like this. They have some other plans as well that you like are a little more easy to manage. For example, this one, like they just manage everything for you. They can migrate your site, a lot of things. And there's also like, for example, WordPress Engine. So that's also pretty popular. So on any of these, you know, like the cost, I will say is very similar to Webflow or probably a little more, but not by like an order of magnitude. So I will say on the pricing side of things, there's really like a tie. I will not choose one or the other because of pricing for sure. I will really choose it like depending on what you are doing and what are the other benefits. So that will be my thoughts on that. And last but not least is just kind of the future of those two platforms. Like you want to build on a technology that will last for many, many years and not something that it's already kind of ending or dying. And I will say in that sense, both platforms show a lot of promise. Like Webflow nowadays has a huge community. Really, a lot of people are moving to Webflow and a lot of people are like kind of doing agencies and studios around all of that. So I will say Webflow definitely has a very promising future. The company is doing a lot of efforts to improve the product and I trust like they're going to do it. And at the same time, on the case of WordPress, like WordPress is already open source, like around 25% of all the sites in the world are built in WordPress. So they already have a huge like market share. There's many big kind of plugins and like teams and developers building up on that. So that is not going to end anytime soon. I will say that it's even more likely for Webflow to end up dying or being acquired and then shut down or something like that than WordPress because it's just so huge. But I don't think that is going to happen. Like Webflow is definitely in a very good point. It's growing a lot and it has a lot of trust from the community. So both platforms have a lot of future ahead. I will not worry about that on any of the two choices. So if I can kind of answer this in a, like if you're looking for the one or the other question, I will kind of say the following. If you are like a company that is looking for like a fast site, you don't want to worry about maintenance or security, and you don't really want to have so much extensibility, probably Webflow is the choice for you. Like that is, you have as easy to use builder. It's fast. It's easy to maintenance. It has a lot of like SEO benefits. It's security. All of that is covered. So Webflow is your choice. On the other side, if you are a company that probably like want to have a little more control on their site, like with more control, I mean, like you want to host it yourself. You want to be able to like scale the servers super quickly. If that's what you want. You want to have a lot of extensibility. You probably want to have the site add some plugins to do some crazy things that require a lot of logic and a lot of data and a lot of like functionality. And at the same time, you are not worried about doing some maintenance every week to keep security on point. Probably WordPress is your choice. Uh, and yeah, I will say that is kind of the answer. Nowadays, most of the sites we build are on Webflow. I will say like 95% because it has a lot of benefits and a lot of companies are really looking for that ease of use and no maintenance and no security problems. But from time to time, we see companies that do follow a little better on the WordPress side, and that makes sense. We're huge fans of Webflow. Like we're like a Webflow enterprise agency, and like we're just pretty involved in the community. But we understand that technologies are nothing more than tools, and you should not be married with any technology or the other. On the complete opposite, what you actually want is to use technology that it's better for you. I don't use an iPhone because I'm a like Apple fanboy. I use an iPhone because I believe that's the better phone right now. And if that change next year with the upcoming Google Pixel, I will probably change to that one. So if you are not sure on what platform or the other you can choose, we're more than happy to help you out with that and do an in-depth analysis of your needs, much more in detail, really going into a lot of the specifics and give you an answer. At Bricks Agency, we do design and development for companies in the tech industry. So really most of our clients are like SaaS companies or AI companies or even crypto companies. Not so much lately because of the crypto winter, but we have done a lot of crypto stuff too. And if you just need a hand, just shoot us an email. We are at bricksagency.com. You can just like say, hey, like we probably need some help with this. Can you give us a hand? We will be more than happy to help you out. No compromise or anything. We really like to meet interesting founders, interesting companies. So just send us an email. We are more than happy to schedule a call with you, and we can take it from there. So again, I hope you liked this video. I know it was a little long, but I really hope that answered your question. I'm Mauro Sicard from Bricks Agency, and I hope you have a great day. Bye bye.